I'm proud to be a midget. The only thing more intense than my midget pride is my hate for tall people, or as we like to call them, biggers. Small power! Small power! Small power!
All right. Moving on. Video by Patrick CC. Video by Patrick CC about short dude, dwarf, or midget. I'm not sure which. Peter Dinklage. I'm thinking he's an actual full-on dwarf. I think midget is the one that's kind of half a dwarf, or like they have normal proportions in a certain part or something. I think Peter Dinklage is an actual dwarf. Yeah, the backlash against Peter Dinklage is insane. I know a while back he had gotten in trouble for saying stuff about Snow White because it was kind of, he was saying that they're so stupid that they're having these, it's like stupid backwards stuff that they're having, you know, dwarf actors in Snow White or whatever, the latest rendition of it. And they ended up not having real dwarfs. I think they ended up using CGI dwarfs. Perhaps in part due to this. And it was seen by a lot of people as, okay, you're a really popular actor. I think he played in Game of Thrones, amongst other things. He's a really popular actor in Hollywood, and he's pulling the ladder up after him. And people were just, I think a lot of the people in the little people community were pissed at him. So, great voice, though. Great voice.
After one small comment on a podcast, Peter Dinklage managed to piss off nearly every little person in Hollywood.
F you, Peter Dinklage. Piece of shit.
Are you
Aw, they're adorable.
watching Dinklage? Do you know that you took work away from me?
Peter became one of the most respected actors of his generation by refusing to let Hollywood
I've gotten the idea that Peter Dinklage is pretty sensitive about his height as well, which I guess I've never been put in that position.
reduce him to the stereotypical roles little people often get. But since he has reached the pinnacle of success in the industry, he may have forgotten just how many dwarf actors are still relying on those exact
It's supposed to be Harry Potter, right?
jobs to survive. Or maybe
Actually, I'm trying to remember what these types of things were. I think it was meant for like printing press areas or something that would keep stuff out of their eyes or something. Not for sure, like these green types of, there's a word for them and I don't know what they are.
how many dwarf actors are still relying on those exact jobs to survive. Or maybe he is gatekeeping them to remain on top, because what sounded like him standing up for his community actually may have resulted.
Peter Dinklage just put 7 of us out of a job. Dwarf actors fury at Disney for canceling 7 dwarfs from Snow White remake because the woke multi-millionaire Game of Thrones stars said they were offensive. There's a mosquito. Sorry.
Resulted in Hollywood erasing little people from the screen entirely. It's so bad that it's being compared to by some little people as the quote physical version of blackface. As an
That is kind of a little bit strange the way that works.
aspiring actor with achondroplasia, Dinklage was determined to avoid low-hanging fruit opportunities that might have helped his career. He said, "I was in an office for quite some time, longer than I should have been, but I was terrified of not being able to pay the bills. I was turning down acting roles, which weren't really acting roles, commercials and stuff like that. So I just stayed in this cubicle for a few years."
Okay. I could understand that, but just because one chooses that for themselves doesn't mean you should. I don't know. I don't know how well I would feel about being cast as a, quote, dwarf actor. It's kind of hard for me to conceptualize that, but you could imagine, like, it being, like, typecast as something that you like, kind of in an ignoble way, perhaps. That wouldn't be the most wonderful thing ever.
years. Dinklage started out in a very common position that a lot of little people confront when aspiring to be actors. Most were traditionally cast for fantasy roles, which Dinklage found disgusting and cruel. Actors with
I don't know if I'd say disgusting and cruel.
dwarfism are relegated to being creatures. They're not really complex human beings, so I was not really interested in that. But ultimately, he knew his career wouldn't take off unless he made a few compromises. There were a number of films that he starred in where his dwarfism contributed to the role, but he wasn't being paraded around as a creature or prop. Instead, he was able
I guess it's maybe better.
to show more emotional depth, with dwarfism just being a part of the character, like how he starred as a defeated actor in the dark meta-comedy Living in Oblivion with Steve Buscemi. Buscemi recommended him for a role in Alexander Rockwell's comedy 13 Moons when
That's nice of him.
Dinklage couldn't find an agent, and it was with this exposure that Dinklage was able to show who he really was. Rockwell openly talked about how his first impressions disappeared the second he got to know him. "You might come in with some luggage about Peter's physicality," Rockwell said. "Right away, he cuts right through that. You're thinking, he's a dwarf, but
He's a dwarf.
Peter comes shining through as a personality beyond any kind of diminutive size issue. And pretty much anyone who met Dinklage felt the same way. He was wonderful."
Again, he's got like a crazy good voice. So that's something. It's kind of strange like how much that affects your perception of a person. It's like, I think especially with regards to women, like a very pretty woman can be utterly kneecapped by the fact that she has at least in my mind, she can be kneecapped by the fact that she has some sort of annoying, high-pitched thing going on.
Wonderfully articulate and insightful, and clearly wanted to be seen as more.
Here's a question. This is maybe completely misogynistic on my point, but it does feel like I don't really watch actually a lot of opera, but it does feel like the prima donnas or the first sopranos or whatever, like they do tend to be very large women, and I don't know if there's some sort of rhyme or reason to that. And I only really know one woman that I would consider to be like a she's a really small girl, who's a really great soprano, but like, it seems like in like stuff like that's on a personal level. But it feels like, again, with regards to opera, I'm imagining the first soprano as a rather large woman. I don't know if there's a reason for that, or if there's some correlation there or not.
More than just a dwarf actor. At the same time, he didn't want his size to be the focus of every conversation.
Feedback.
But when he did...
Now I'm just looking at this in a new light. It feels vaguely salacious. The look, the feet, I don't know.
Speak about little people in Hollywood, his approach was usually thoughtful rather than confrontational. He wasn't publicly attacking others or aggressively calling out studios by name. He simply believed the industry should slowly move beyond using dwarves as simple fantasy characters or visual gimmicks and start giving them the same depth and complexity as any other performer.
Not dangerous, but they're kind of, they're creatures, they're ethereal beings, these dwarves usually are, and then they're asexual. And they're either fools or they're very filled with wisdom and have know all the answers, but a bit removed.
It's true. Like, it feels like a little bit like the magical Negro trope or something like that.
And they never get the princess. That's fine, but we're in the modern day now, and I think if we still have that, I don't want to throw words like stereotypes out in this interview. I want to avoid that, but it'll just perpetuate itself. And
I agree with the notion that it's not nice to be pigeonholed, I guess. But I also think that there are, like, obviously we have a lot of legendarium, a lot of lore in our history of small people, and it does feel like, especially back in the day when CGI wasn't a thing, like, what were you going to do? Like you could maybe use some sort of camera trick in order to make people look like dwarves, but as it was, gnomes or trolls or, dwarves, I guess, I don't know, dwarves themselves were considered magical creatures that in some cases they might have been. The notion is like, and what are you going to do? You need someone who can play that role and who can look the part without some sort of fancy tech. So I feel like the times that like it kind of warranted this stereotypical typecasting, perhaps.
And I see it in today's films and pieces of art. You know, I'm not interested in playing those things.
In that clip, you can feel his hesitance, like he was walking a fine line, because in the back of his mind...
That's the thing. I feel like the second people get, like, really popular, they become more assertive. That's where I think sometimes it's good that a lot of people don't have power, because you can see kind of the edges of what they would do if they ever got power. If they were truly capable of just being assertive and getting whatever they wanted, like, what would they actually do with it? Like, I don't know. Impotence is not necessarily, I don't know.
He knew that these stereotypical roles also do give little people consistent jobs in the industry, which is important for them to be able to take to then one day be able to advance their careers. But before we get into that, let's say you're about to jump on a roller coaster and you need someone to watch your wallet, so you hand it to a pickpocket. That's not security, that's a donation. There's a reason you wouldn't trust a pickpocket with your wallet, just like there's a reason why Morgan & Morgan is America's largest intern. Like hiring an army to go into battle. They've got more than one is free unless they win. For more information, you can go to forthepeople.com/Patrick.
There you go. Forthepeople.com. I assume that's his link.
In 2003, Dinklage would get a role as a train enthusiast named Finn McBride in Tom McCarthy's The Station Agent.
Hey, buddy, where's Snow White? Grumpy or sleepy over there, huh?
While having dwarfism was a central point of Peter Dinklage's character, he didn't mind because Finn had the depth he was looking for. The movie was pretty brilliant because it found a way to make you forget about his size until someone abusive confronted him with prejudice. You spent most of the hour and 30 minutes trying to figure out
I already feel mad about that guy.
exactly how he felt. Often roles written for someone my size are a little flat. I love this about this character that Tom wrote. He has this stuff going on. He has romance. He's got romantic feelings. He's got anger and he's got flaws. I'm not a spokesperson or an activist for people my size. I'm not going to get on my soapbox.
Just FYI, I think also Peter Dinklage's character in Game of Thrones, which was like huge as far as it goes, that was like a universally beloved character. Tyrion. I haven't actually watched Game of Thrones, except for, like, you know, highlights and whatnot. Read some of the lore. Intriguing world. I'd mentioned how people's imagination tends to warp reality. The guy who wrote it, what is his name? Oh, goodness. He's got a very, I think he actually helped write Elden Ring as well, and his style is it's kind of a downer. He's got a very cynical perspective, I think, of people in the world, and it's for me, it's not for me. Okay.
About that stuff. Comical movies starring dwarves such as Austin Powers films, because people can do what they want to do. Sure, it might perpetuate a stereotype, but I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I have a grand time at those movies. I was laughing my butt off at those movies, so I'm not going to cast my judgment upon it. For me personally, that's something I try and stay away from.
See, to me, that is the most balanced, nuanced take you could, have. I don't like it. I think it'd be nicer if they had more variety of casting. But I'm not going to, crap on other people for doing so. It feels like his more recent take was that they're still doing this stuff. It's terrible. Like, it was more indignant, perhaps, than this far more reasonable take, in my mind.
From that same year he starred in The Station Agent, Dinklage took another minor role in one of the most iconic...
I remember that. That was funny as all kid. I think he kind of beat the crap out of Will Ferrell at some point because, spoilers, Will Ferrell is an elf. Well, an elf. He's a child who I think accidentally crawled into Santa's bag and ended up at the North Pole and was working with the elves. And he goes into the real world, and obviously Peter Dinklage is short, so he mistakes Peter Dinklage for an elf. It doesn't go well.
Christmas movies of the 21st century. Elf. Every Christmas season, little people in Hollywood get the call to play Santa's helpers, but the movie Elf was different. The only actual dwarf who was cast in the film was Peter Dinklage, and he didn't play an elf, but rather as Miles Finch, a successful children's author. The short scene he's in is simple, yet extremely layered. Buddy, the actual elf, who is 6'3", sees a short man and immediately assumes he must secretly be one of Santa's elves. Not a businessman, not a normal person, just a fantasy creature.
Sorry.
Does Santa know that you left the workshop?
You know, we're all laughing our heads off.
Did you have to borrow a reindeer to get down here?
Buddy not treating him like a regular guy represents the exact frustration Dinklage had spent years dealing with in real life. Also, Peter's character in and of itself seems like a protest against the roles that Hollywood usually offers little people. Instead of playing the magical elf, Dinklage
See, here's the thing. I think this is one of the things that Hollywood is kind of lost, I think, these days. It feels like they are kind of incapable of creating a character who happens to be black, or a character who happens to maybe to be a dwarf, or a character who happens to be gay. Like, if a person is insert intersectional thing, if a person is that characteristic, that's what they are. That is their whole shtick. That is their defining feature. Right? They can only create black characters. They can only create gay characters. They're only going to create whatever characters. They can't create a character who happens to be blank. And that, it feels like that's part of their issue. Like, if this happens to be an incidental characteristic and it comes into the story in an intuitive way, that's a lot more palatable, I think, to most people than some sort of crowbarred, ham-fisted BS. And to me, this was funny. If it was activism, I don't know if that's what they intended it to be, but it was hilarious, and it made the point without hitting it home and reasserting it several times to make sure you got the point. I liked this scene. It was funny as all get out to me.
plays the man insulted by being mistaken for one, but they still did use his physical stature to make the scene funny. Finch hilariously runs across the table, which seemingly takes him forever, then whips Buddy's ass despite the obvious size disadvantage. And this balance is what made the role feel so representative of Dinklage himself. He never wanted to pretend his dwarfism didn't exist, he just didn't want it to be the only thing people saw when they looked at him. He would take that same approach with his character Tyrion Lannister in Game of
Did I say Tywin? I think it is Tyrion.
Thrones, which launched Peter into mainstream success, making him a full-blown A-list star. When Dinklage found himself talking to the co-creator of Game of Thrones, David Benioff, he was extremely cautious about taking on a fantasy role, but David had actually met Peter at dinner parties and felt he was the obvious choice for Tyrion Lannister. He was always much friendlier to my wife Amanda than he was to me. I knew he was incredibly funny, incredibly smart, and had that caustic wit. Game of Thrones was a TV adaptation of a book written by George R.R. Martin.
That's what it was, George R.R. Martin.
So in that meeting with Benioff,
who I believe hasn't written a book even like remotely recently. He's been, I think, because of the success of Game of Thrones, because of the success of a lot of this stuff, he kind of became lackadaisical, slothful in his writing stuff. Apparently he has to use the same typewriter and whatnot, and yeah, I don't know. People are rather unsure as to whether he will come out with another book at all before he dies. He's pretty old these days. Yeah, he's old.
And the other co-creator, Dan Weiss, before anyone explained Game of Thrones or Tyrion Lannister to him, he made a simple request. No beard, no pointy shoes. Dwarves in these genres always have this look. My guard was up. Not even my guard, my metal fence. My barbed wire was up. Even Lord of the Rings had dwarf tossing jokes in it. It's like...
Okay. Shit you, man. That was awesome. That was awesome. I'm sorry. Like, I love that scene where Gimli's awesome as well. I don't think he's actually played by a dwarf, but man, he was like the most badass character in there. You know, dwarves actually, if I remember correctly, dwarves technically, they wouldn't have actually become wraiths. I think that they were kind of created to be very, very hardy as characters. So it's one of those things where, like, I think the idea was that the rings would maybe make them greedy, and that did happen, but they wouldn't have, like, faded like the other characters. They wouldn't have fallen to the rings in the same way, I think. It's kind of strange, but yeah, I love that scene.
Really? But he learned from Benioff and Weiss that Tyrion was a different kind of fantasy little person. He's somebody who turns that on its head. No beard, no pointy shoes, a romantic, real human being. Even off-screen, he seemed to take the part very seriously. When asked if he had read the books, he admitted that he'd only read the first in fear it would interfere with his performance in future seasons.
I don't want to know what happens to me down the road. I'm terrified.
Yeah. And that's a reasonable character. I mentioned he's kind of like George R. R. Martin's books are kind of a downer. Everyone dies. Okay? Everyone, like, it is up in the air as to who's going to, like, yeah, I don't know. Again, it's not my type of genre.
And I don't want to
Intriguing and a lot of compelling characters, I think, but man.
play any sort of ending.
Also, it's a little bit, explicit at times if I know correctly.
And I'm doing this show, and I just live and breathe this show, and I'm so embarrassed when I have to,
Yeah.
Why'd you have to?
But Dinklage initially believed that the potential success of Game of Thrones was too good to be true.
If something feels that good,
It's not gonna.
it's not going to work. Nobody's going to buy this. In the first season, we didn't have any money, truly. I mean, it's all relative. We had some money. But even at the end, if you visit our base camp, our trailers were the same as they were in the first season. It was really, and I think that's what made the spirit of all of us come together so well. And the crew, we roughed it, man. You really would never know. Our salaries got higher as it went along, but the conditions were kind of great, like an indie movie almost. I mean, the sets were extraordinary, and the costumes were extraordinary. That didn't feel indie, but the vibe did, and I think that's what really. But to answer your question, no, I was kind of cynical. Like,
I think another thing that kind of happened is if you listen to people talk about it, they say it started out great and it ended really poorly. I think that they started out pretty much like on point with regards to the books, like they adapted it really, really well, but it kind of got a little bit dodgy with regards to them making alterations and stuff like that. I think, as I understand it, they started taking more liberties and didn't end well, as I understand it, ended very, very poorly, which seems to be a motif with regards to a lot of Hollywood stuff. They can start out the season really well, but then they get kind of too big for their boots, and they start making alterations, fixing things.
this is great. Nobody's going to go for it.
Over the next 4 seasons, his character became the fan favorite of the entire show. Peter Dinklage made Tyrion so believable and human that when fans began criticizing the show's writing near season 8, they blamed the writers instead of Dinklage for how the character
I think that can be the case too. Like, you can have a great actor. Like, I don't think that's like an unwarranted thing. I think you can have like a great actor with terrible writing, and like they can do a lot, but they can't fix everything.
evolved. Regardless of the way the show eventually ended, which many felt was terrible, Dinklage had finally gained the respect of Hollywood on a massive scale. He received 7 major awards, including an Emmy for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Drama Series, and with an estimated $25 million net worth and worldwide recognition, all the gates of Hollywood opened for Peter in a way that they never had for dwarves in the past. He was basically able to handpick any career opportunity he wanted, hosting Saturday Night Live, playing Bolivar Trask in the X-Men franchise, voice acting
Don't know who Boulevard Trask was.
in the Angry Birds movie, or acting as Eitri in Avengers Infinity War. Now, if Peter wanted to act as a dwarf,
That was kind of a cool fortune thing they did there in Infinity War. Did you ever see that character again? Literally, you just used a star to force it. Pretty cool.
It was a choice. I feel really lucky, although I hate that word, lucky. It cheapens a lot of hard work. Living in Brooklyn in an apartment without any heat and paying for dinner at the bodega with dimes, I don't think I felt myself lucky back then. Doing plays for $50 and trying to be true to myself as an artist and turning down commercials where they wanted a leprechaun, saying I was lucky negates the hard work I put in and spits on the guy who's freezing his ass off back in Brooklyn. So I won't say I'm lucky. I'm fortunate enough to find or attract very talented people. For some reason I found them and they found me.
So I just want to point out, fortune is technically a synonym for lucky. I do agree with him though. Like, there is a lot of work that goes into stuff, but I do tend to think you have to take your breaks when you can get them. I guess maybe that would be my well-balanced, enlightened opinion.
Unfortunately, Peter Dinklage didn't seem to understand that his voice now carried a ton of weight in industry decisions. He had the kind of star power that can get people fired and even cause the production to stop if the vision didn't fit exactly what he wanted.
He's like a profoundly cool beard. I kind of want, Peter Dinklage, not necessarily this guy. This guy's beard is okay. That is astounding. It's a very cool look going on.
Fired and even caused the production to stop if the vision didn't fit exactly what he wanted. While it seemed like Dinklage
It's a tale as old as time, though. Like, if people get popular, they start to get entitled. And I'm not for sure how much of that is avoidable. Like, how possible is it for things which exist in your life to not become normalized, for you not to start expecting them and to stop appreciating them? Like, it's something to strive for, that type of awareness, and maybe it just has something to do with the notion of stagnation or just things becoming, like, I suppose you could try to upset your life every now and then to keep stirring the pot every now and then to allow yourself to keep noticing things and to keep appreciating the stuff around you. Maybe that's a part of it. Just I don't know. Every now and then, just make sure you change stuff up a bit. I don't know. I don't know if the answer's to all that, but it does feel like it's very hard for you not to get used to the life you lead and used to the things you have and to the power or influence you might have, and to start for that to not affect how you behave. I don't know.
used to be a lot more careful with his words. He probably didn't feel like he needed to do that anymore. And his comments on the Mark Maron show would harm opportunities for the community he tried to uplift for so long.
And this is I believe the powder keg.
And it all started with the disaster that was the remake of a Walt Disney classic, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. In 2021, Disney started casting for the main roles in a live-action remake of Snow White, but before they even started filming, the entire decision was drowning.
Just to clarify, if you don't know the lore behind this wonderful young lady's comments had a lot to do, I think, well, I say a lot. It had to do with some of the issues that I believe plagued the movies. She's got a mouth, and she seems not to know when to exercise discretion.
In controversy, people were already resistant of live actions as a total cash grab, but the decision to cast Rachel Zegler for the main role received criticism for countless reasons. Some were racially driven, like questioning why a woman of Latin descent was playing a character whose skin is described as the fairest of them all. Others were critical.
And she is, like, Rachel Zegler, just, again, I say again, she's very duplicitous when it comes to this type of thing, because I don't know, it feels like in other scenarios, I believe she was cast in West Side Story, which is supposed to, like, she's not technically the right either nationality or something for that. And it's like, oh, does it, like, she will alternatively say representation is very important, and then in scenarios where it suits her, she's like, oh, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter if you're... In the case of West Side Story, she wasn't the right nationality, and she was like, oh, no, it's like, why does it matter? Like, yeah. there's not a whole lot of consistency, and that might be a general observation on the nature of actors as well, because they tend to. I don't know. I tend to think they're not the most morally consistent types of individuals. They're kind of maybe blank slates more. Hence the fact that they're good at acting.
Of her open hatred for the original story and desire to change it into something modern, but most people just simply thought she was annoying.
There's a big
That's certainly part of it.
focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Yeah. Weird.
And that was a thing that happened.
But then Peter Dinklage unexpectedly became a part of the controversy when the media pulled a soundbite from comedian Mark Maron's WTF podcast. Peter criticized Disney for celebrating the casting of Rachel Zegler while refusing to acknowledge that the story itself could be insensitive towards little people.
Literally no offense to anything, but I was a little taken back by the they were very proud to cast a Latino actress as Snow White.
Yeah.
But you're still telling the story of Snow White.
Yeah.
And Seven Dwarfs.
Sure.
So, look, take a step back and look at what you're doing there.
Yeah.
I know. That makes no sense to me.
But,
you're progressive in one way, but you're still making that backward story of seven dwarves living in a cave to get what the you doing, man? Have I done nothing to advance the cause?
Now, for anyone
I don't know. It might come off as a bit of a joke. Maybe it was like a lacking context, perhaps, or lacking I think you could interpret it in such a fashion. He says no offense to anyone or whatever, but he kind of goes on to come off like a pretty definitive position on the subject.
unfamiliar with the story of Snow White, the dwarves do not live in a cave. They work in a mine.
I think they mine. Is that a dwarf stereotype?
But actually live together in a small cottage where they take Snow White in after she escapes the evil queen, making them quite literally the heroes of the story. Also, what's interesting,
They do. I could see how people would see, like, oh, it is kind of that stereotype of a, I don't know, magical, helpful little creatures or whatever, whistle while you work type thing. Like, I could see that a little bit. Still, though, it's just like the whole notion is, I don't know.
Interesting about this is
like however far CGI has come too. I think that is an element here too. However far CGI has come, they remarked upon this in the movie. It looked unsettling, from what I've heard. Like it was uncanny valley type stuff, like the way they had done the dwarves. And there's something like that. It's just like you still kind of, again, you can do tricks with lighting or whatever, but that's pretty expensive and rather labor intensive, I imagine, compared to just hiring a dwarf actor. Like, what the heck, Peter? What the heck?
Peter says, "Have I done nothing to advance the cause?" implying that his success as a serious actor, as well as speaking on behalf of little people, should have gotten through.
Just FYI, I don't think they should have cast a Latino actor. Like, I don't know. I don't know. There's been a whole genre of that type of thing too, where I think it was Mermaid. They've done, well, I say, I don't know if it's exactly a pattern, but it does feel like they are trying to be more diverse. The whole idea of that seems a little bit counterintuitive. If your solution to representation, which, like, admittedly, I don't even know if I would agree with representation, that it's a necessity or anything like that. Like, Hank Aaron, what was the lady on the bus? That lady, Jesse Owens, yes. At a certain point in time, I would say representation did matter. It did matter that you could see a black person go out there and do this stuff. It feels like these days it's just like the fifth abstract glass ceiling that needs to be shattered and an excuse to say that this is the first black paraplegic lesbian trans woman to do whatever. They're coming up with categories to break into, it feels like. Where was I going with this? And it comes back to the notion, if you're, like, advancing the cause of representation by taking a white character and making them other blank ethnicity, it just kind of comes off as, okay, so you can't create a new character? Like, are the people in this category, are they incapable of creating original stories, or are the people who write these stories incapable of making original characters tailor fit for this individual? But you're taking a character whose voice, whose role, whose personality is all oriented towards different group, different sex, different whatever, and you're just taking that person's role, giving it to another person. Like, I don't think it reflects well on the individuals who take those roles or their group, that you're just kind of cannibalizing another person's or another group's set of character. Like, I don't know. Feels like that whole notion would be counterintuitive to what they're ostensibly trying to do.
To Hollywood that...
And actually, you can check out the rest of this if you want. Patrick CC, the backlash against Peter Dinklage is insane.